Welcome to American Dreams, Keys to Success, with your host, Alan Olson.
Welcome back. We're here today visiting with Isaac Jacobson. Isaac, before the break, we're talking about eTags, the company that you started. Now, you just hit your 40th birthday?
Right.
Wow. And you've already done quite a bit in your life.
Thank you.
The dial.com for the internet radio that was used by Yahoo back in 98 and several other stations. But let's go into advice you would offer a young entrepreneur starting out today.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I get asked this a lot, right? And one of the things that I tell an entrepreneur they need to recognize first is that they're an underdog. Every entrepreneur, if you're building a business, you're starting from a near zero position. Even if you have capital, I mean, you have to come first with your idea. And so once you understand that you are an underdog, how to use that to your advantage. And so over my career, I've built up 5 different rules that I've experienced and I've also seen in other businesses I've invested in. And so one of the first things that I tell any entrepreneur, any underdog, is that they have to first know their value. And I don't mean necessarily the value of their company, the valuation of their shares, but what is their value to the company? What is their value to the sales process, to the consumer? What is the overall value? You know, and that I believe in you enough to invest in you, that I believe in something enough to invest in that business. So that's first, number one. They have to understand that. One quick point was for instance, with VCs, when I would go back to a venture capitalist and I say, okay, well, I have this company, I fixed it, it's worth this so much money, and if we add the CTO, add $5 million to the valuation. They thought that was preposterous. Well, why was $5 million to a one guy? Well, his last company sold in a fire sale, and just the software sold for $5 million, written by that CTO. So I can take a losing situation, that capital, what was made on it, and I can apply it to the next company because that person was responsible for it. So in that case, we actually determined a value to an individual, $5 million, by adding a certain person to a company. So I can build that valuation up.
Let me just the story brings to mind. I met a guy that he was in the gold mining business, and along that same line, and he had owned several mines down the Arizona area, and we were sitting in it was a smoothie shop franchise that I owned at the time, and I said, "How'd you get started?" And he says, I got started by a guy offered me the mining rights, and I started in on this, and shortly thereafter, another guy came. He wanted to buy it from me, and the guy said, "What do you want?" He says, "I'll give you." He offered. I said, "I just give me $300,000 and it's yours." The guy says, "The lesson I'll give you is this: never tell a person the price." He says, "I would have given you $3 million." So, but let's go on. That's good advice. Know your value.
Right, know your value. Then the other one I got was actually from my old business partner at the Dial, first.com, and that was Todd Herman. He worked for him, went on to be MSNBC VP, and then he went on to be the RNC's chief new media strategist. So this guy's really gone places. And I find it a privilege to call him my brother-in-law. One of the things he told me is this: that Isaac, what I've learned is it's never too early to sell and never stop selling. In other words, if you're a CEO of a company or a business owner, always look for that exit. You always want to look at it. You know, people say, well, you want to build your business and your cash flow and build everything up. That happens. That's the norm, what you should be doing. But it's never too early to also sell in terms of like software or vaporware. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've just sold vapor, right? You go to the customer, you can sell it, and then they finally tell you, this is what I want. Okay, then you go back, guys, this is what we got to build, right? And that's how you sell, you pre-sell things. And so it's never too early to sell and never stop selling. Even as a CEO, if you quit selling your company or your products at any point, the jungle builds around you and entropy builds around you, and the void makes up its own decisions on your behalf if you're not there actively pushing it.
Great advice. Sell, and
constantly.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And then finally, is the other one is my grandpa saying, the figure out how much you're going to make, cut it in half again. That's what you put in your pocket. How long it's going to take, double it, then double it again. We already talked about that. But then the one of the big ones that I want to get into is distribution. What I've learned with eTags is that he who controls distribution controls everything. So I now look at businesses in terms of what isn't the piece of technology that's interesting, but how you distribute it. Who's controlling that distribution chain? Who is controlling the bottleneck? And that's where you make all the money. Quick story. I was working for the Hearst family for a while, and they're heavily invested in the food business. And I was helping them with something entirely different. But Kathy Hearst told me a very interesting story. She said, Isaac, do you know who feeds all the prisoners? I said, well, I don't know. She goes, well, we actually provide a lot of the food for the prison system. Our companies do that. But you know who actually does the bidding for that? The trucking companies.
Really?
And they have all the security clearance. They have all the security to get that truck past the gate. So they go ahead and go to the prison system, the prison commission, and they say, well, we need, this batch of food, and it's expensive to feed all those prisoners. We need a bid. Well, the trucking companies have all the security clearance, so then they go ahead, they subcontract that bid out to all the food providers, and you have to go through them. So they control everything. They control the price of the whole thing, and then they give the food companies their pittance of pay, and they keep the lion's share of it. So through that one lesson, I learned that I had to control distribution. With e-tags, if you don't pay me my license to put a CD with something, I stop you from putting the CD on it. That in turn will, in some cases, reduce that margin of profit by 24% for some products. And so they have to put it on there. And so I learned that if I had intellectual property, I could have a chokehold, or I could have a point of distribution control. Also, I could control what music, movie, software goes on my discs. I get to say what goes on there. I'm not at the mercy of some other network. I own the network, so I control that distribution.
It's interesting. Protecting your competitive advantage is so crucial in this world of changing technology. And it sounds like the companies that really do well are the ones that have good processes and have protected their intellectual property. In fact, I was looking at the Wall Street Journal yesterday. I think the number 2 valuation on the stock market is IBM.
Right.
Who that's one of the key characteristics of them is that of the patent protection.
Well, right. They own the patent farm, right? There's $20 billion in aggregate value of just patents. So, what's interesting about that is I have people ask me, Isaac, I have a patent. I'm going to make all this money, or, what should I do with this patent? And I tell people, look, a patent doesn't give you a right to a business. It gives you the right to litigate. So in other words, if you're unwilling to defend your IP, especially with all the cloning that's going on in China and all around the world, all the copying that's being done, it's really that protection of the idea and then enforcement of the idea that I believe is going to be the next gigantic financial market in actually trading those ideas in forms of patents, which is why I bought into e-tags.
You have to keep innovating, though, in the business, right?
Right.
Fresh approach to keep it going.
Absolutely. You have to do it. And it's not like I just have one patent, I sit on it. We're constantly filing for new patents, right? We're constantly buying other patents, and we're relicensing for different divisions. And so you really want to take, again, it's to keep that control of distribution, either control of your IP or your ideas or even your content. You have to keep those innovations fresh, new, and you have to keep adding to it. Otherwise, the court system sees you as a stagnant company anyway, and you actually don't even live competitively. You lose in the legal system, because you're not here defending your IP or adding new ideas to it.
Good advice. Well, I'm here today visiting with Isaac Jacobson. Isaac, it's been a pleasure having you on today's show.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Nothing's more important than spending time with your family.
At Greenstone Rogoff Olson Company, we're trusted advisors to the highly successful. Our goal is to help you find the right strategy to protect your wealth for yourself and those you love. Kids, why do I feel like I've just had an audit?
As trusted advisors to the highly successful, we'll make sure that you don't lose your shirt.
Roco helping you along the